This is 16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing swell.
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 I'm doing so swell.
We will say it's swell.
It's swell.
How about you?
I'm good. Back in the
Good.
swing of things. I've been making a lot of music.
You
I've
have been.
doing a lot of work. Keeping busy.
My congestion has left my body. It's great.
Oh, good.
Remember
very
last
good.
time we recorded?
Yes.
And I was like,
You sounded like this.
I did sound like that. That's exactly what I sounded like.
I felt very bad because we waited till the last minute to
I
record.
was like, why did we record
we really
now?
didn't have another option to record except for right then. So
Yeah, that was rough. That was really rough. It was not my best work.
luckily I didn't have a cold then, and I'm over the cold that I got from you now. So
Yeah, so only I have to live forever in our podcast backlog. Sounding like... So... Just leave it to me to go back to, school in person for like a week and get sick immediately.
That's really not surprising given the state of the world, you know?
Yeah, so I said leave it to me.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, I want to crack right into it. What are we talking about this week?
I do. Okay, we can do the other fun stuff at the end, I guess. Because one of my things is kind of fun at the end.
Oh, okay, good.
That's like a
Yeah, let's
positive
save it for
thing.
the end.
Okay, well, just because we like to suffer, we chose propaganda this week.
Oh, well, what's suffering about that? Propaganda?
Do you not feel like the world is full of it right now?
Well, yeah.
And then it's at the root of all evil.
As we were doing research for this, I was just like, is there any form of communication that isn't propaganda?
It's a little meta at times. I definitely get like into it. I'm like, oh, everything is.
Well, I mean,
It's
I was
all
just-
propaganda,
Yeah.
right?
We're talking about propaganda, so in a general sense, information, ideas, opinions, images that often only give one part of an argument. They are broadcast, published, or in some way spread with the intention of influencing people's opinions. That's what propaganda is.
no.
Yeah.
All the bad stuff.
Well, so, yeah, there's some debate about this word, and perhaps you know about this, so I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's some debate as to whether or not propaganda is always bad. Some people think it's always bad because it's always somebody trying to
No, I
influence
don't think it's
somebody
always
else.
bad. I don't think it's always bad.
So I really don't think so either.
I think a lot of it is bad.
But there is debate in scholarly circles about whether or not propaganda is always bad, basically. Whether it always has negative connotations, I suppose I should say. Yeah.
Okay, I think we could dive really deep into this, but I don't know if that does anything, so.
Oh, no, please, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, if we wanted to be that way, like, wouldn't just, like, the windy sign on the side of the road be propaganda?
Yeah. So there's a big overlap between propaganda and advertising. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
often-
right?
Yeah.
Like, aren't we
Often advertisements do use,
propagandic devices?
yeah, techniques that are associated with propaganda. But they're not, I don't think they're necessarily propaganda by default, just as
Sure.
ads.
Okay, that's fair.
But
So there's the distinction.
there is a bit of a blurred line. But yes, I think we can kind of distinguish.
Okay.
They use the same techniques in ads, but ads are not necessarily always propaganda. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so basically it's all of that stuff that I mentioned, media of various kinds that are designed to influence people's opinions. How do we recognize it? This is something we,
Oh, gosh.
yeah, identifying it has always been a problem, so we're not the only ones here. So again, most of this is from sort of scholarly approaches to propaganda. So scholars in this field have the same difficulties that we do because it's tough to differentiate propaganda from other types of persuasion. There's this guy named Richard Allen Nelson. He provides this definition. He works in this field. He's like, propaganda is neutrally defined as a systematic form of purposeful persuasion that attempts to influence the emotions, attitudes, opinions, and actions of specified target audiences for ideological, political, or commercial purposes through the controlled transmissions of one-sided messages.
Controlled transmission, I think, is the key there.
Which may or may not be factual.
Oh, no.
Via mass and direct media
Oh,
channels.
I don't like it anymore.
So that's a pretty big,
That's bad.
that's an all-encompassing.
That's where things go bad.
Well, okay, so it's like what you were talking about. I suppose that not everything that we would think of like as an ad or something isn't. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard.
I'm going back
The
and
more
forth
I
in
think
my
about
head just listening to you. I'm like, oh wait,
The more I think about it, the more it's like, oh, really, everything is propaganda all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am.
'Cause I'm just thinking about world of like digital advertising.
Yeah.
Like AdWords, Google. When you make an ad and put it on the internet, you select target audiences. You pay
Their age.
amount of money based on, different demographics, how many people in that demographic you want to reach. So like there's always a target. You're always, in the case of advertising, you're always persuading them to buy your crap, whatever your crap is.
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, the goal is to make money, right? Or to benefit.
Yeah.
So that's got to be like, I would assume, part of that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Well,
I think
dive
I'm
in a
back
little
into
bit.
everything being it.
Yeah, I mean,
now I'm struggling.
let's dive in a little bit. We can find some examples that we are familiar
Okay.
with. So we've got like paintings, cartoons, posters, pamphlets, films, radio shows, TV shows, podcasts, like this one.
Hello.
We're propagandists. Who
Coming
knew?
at you live.
Websites, social media sites, religious communications, even bots and botnets and algorithms that spread disinformation.
Facebook.
Yeah, just Facebook, all of Facebook, all the time.
Too soon?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. You are very familiar with this subject.
I love teaching
You
propaganda.
Teach propaganda, and what do you focus on when you teach it?
Wartime propaganda.
From World War II.
It's mostly World War II, but I do let them use some World War One. I use a lot of World War One images as examples of propaganda.
What are your favorite examples?
Well, I
of
mean,
that
like
stuff?
Keep Calm and Carry On is World War One.
Keep Calm,
like that's
Carry
where
On.
that comes from.
I see.
A lot of our Uncle
That
Sam
thing-
stuff is
Yes,
World War One.
The guy with a big red, white, blue hat.
That's
that image.
like, I mean, he still exists even so, but he got some real traction
it's
during
like
that
recruitment posters.
Yeah, and also just like some of my favorite from World War II are like loose lips, like ships. So it's like, there's also ones about how there were different sexually transmitted things going around during the war. So there are like some really ridiculous ads about like how to not get
about,
STIs.
Films, weren't you talking? There were like films
Yeah,
about.
like Chaplin did some stuff.
We talked about it in our sex ed episode.
Yeah, we did. There's also like Mickey Mouse and like Disney did some stuff
For
that
the
was
war?
like World War II kind
Interesting.
of style. Yeah, like Donald Duck, I'm pretty sure is one of the ones that's coming to my mind. But like also
Wartime Donald Duck.
Yeah, wartime Donald Duck. He's like making like missiles and stuff. It's a great clip. But my favorite one I show my students is of this family, or it's a guy driving a convertible car. And he's like a business dude. He like has this great car. He's like wearing his little hat. He's obviously going to work. It's like a beautiful day. And it says, if you ride alone, you ride with Hitler.
Oh
And it was supporting car shares during the time. So like there is some good stuff that came out of like World War II sort of propaganda. It's really incredible art. But yeah, my students really like that stuff. And then like I'll talk about it more later too, but I like do branch it into a lot of the type of propaganda that they see today. And so it's kind of fun to see them learn in real time, like, oh gosh, I'm truly surrounded by it. Everything is an ad, I think is what my students would say after that.
For sure.
Yeah. So some non-wartime examples.
Yeah.
Shall we move into that?
Sure.
Okay. Religion.
Yes. The word
What
itself.
if I just listed them all in a
Sure.
row and
Yes.
then we
All
just moved
religion
on? Hello.
ever.
Religion is propaganda. No, I'm just kidding.
Religion is propaganda.
Please swipe that from this record.
Yeah, we're gonna take off everyone in the world with this podcast somehow, somewhere along the line.
Nope, we're cutting all of this now. Beep.
Religion, yes. So even the word itself, the word propaganda actually originates from
I think meant religion.
the Catholic Church. It originates from the Catholic Church in the 17th century. The papacy established a special division within the church called the Sacred Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
so that's,
boy. 1600s?
we steal the word from Latin.
You are kidding me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we got political propaganda that is sort
Well,
of outside of the
yeah.
context of war all the time. So, like, campaign signs that
Yeah.
you stick in your yard, it's kind of
Or
propaganda.
the flags around town.
Yeah, the flags is what we have around here.
That say, do you miss me yet? On one side of the American
That is
flag.
indeed a kind of propaganda. Well, let's just say there are more run-of-the-mill ones, like just
Yes. Sorry.
normal in the normal order of political. I would say like maybe pre-2012 or whenever everything went to hell. You would get campaign signs, slogans, stump speeches are a kind of propaganda.
Yeah, well, they definitely are.
because there's a lot.
Well, I'm also
of
thinking of like,
going on there.
okay, so like the yard signs in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Remember those? They just say "I love you, Jesus." Mm-hmm. Oh, those aren't political. Well, they were kind of.
Well, they're religious.
Yeah, they were religious, but I was trying to think of the political ones. But also, after 9/11, everybody put those ribbons on their car that said like "United We Stand," I don't know.
So that's stuff that's like, again, so we were talking about this, like, these are the kinds of things where there's an opportunity for them to not really be bad. I don't really think that pieces of propaganda that are calls for like national unity or community building,
I guess those aren't really political so much as,
well, they are, but I'm just not convinced that they're nefarious when the whole point is to, you know, be in something together, stuff like that. Like,
you're okay with that?
Well, I don't have to be okay
We're
with
gonna
it.
draw that line very
I'm just
quickly.
trying to decide if there's a line about what's good and bad, and I'm having a bit of trouble identifying what is terrible about you know, that kind of stuff.
I agree.
But yeah, I don't know. Again, we have to keep in mind that there has to be like a target audience for your propaganda, and you have to be trying to persuade people of something. So in those cases, perhaps those don't meet the threshold because there's not like a target audience.
That's true.
I don't know.
It's just like a general.
There are some times though when I
did this gesture, like people would know that I was like,
but there are
together.
I guess there are some times when I think of those kinds of gestures as, hey, I want you to be on my team. I want you to be in this together with us. You being some sort of anonymous third person who is resisting it somehow. Or I don't know. That's a little hard. Those are where.
Well, it's like the "What Would Jesus Do" bracelets or the fish sticker. Like all of these types of things are like. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those were very popular when we were in high school. Like, some of these things are just popping in my head now, and so I'm like trying to apply this thought. Like, what are they? You know, who is their audience? And yeah, I guess I have a lot more religious ones coming to my head than I thought I would.
I guess you do.
Interesting.
Sort of within each of these types of propaganda, we'll see these techniques that we've been talking about, and advertising again has used a lot of these. So there's it's gonna feel a lot like advertising, but you've got like testimonials. Those can be a technique of propaganda where it's like, hey, look at this guy, he's saying you should go
these
buy
are
this
like
thing.
Testimonials. Also, like, I mean, we grew up in like the heart of the Got Milk campaigns.
Yes,
literally everybody who had nothing to do with the dairy industry put a milk mustache on. We are like a product of that. Look at how much milk I still drink. Like, I blame Michael Jordan for this.
I blame Michael Jordan for this.
His sticks out to me for some reason.
So testimonials, stereotyping, a lot of ads and other kinds of propaganda rely on stereotyping. Fear appeals, we see a lot of
There's
this.
also like either or thinking. Those are some of my favorites because those are the ones on Facebook that are like, if you don't share this picture of Jesus, then you don't love him. And
yes,
it's like,
that's a fear appeal.
Yeah, it's like it's also either or thinking because it's either you do this or you don't love him.
If you don't send this chain email to 10 people, then you're going to have bad luck and die.
And your cat's gonna, whatever.
Yeah. Bandwagoning, we're pretty familiar with that, I guess I would say. It's like if you're not a cool kid if you're not hopping on board this latest and greatest,
I mean,
whatever.
like Mad Men, like that entire industry is bandwagon basically. Like all of the sex appeal, all of like, and if you think like classic cigarette ads, those are bandwagon ads.
You don't want to be left behind because it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want to be
thinking.
the one left out. Yeah.
Appeals to prejudice. We see this a lot. I guess this is kind of funny. We see this. I see a lot of now that it's football season again. There are a lot of ads where you can tell there's like a sports rivalry because they just wear opposite colored jerseys or whatever. So you're like appealing to the kind of in group. You're appealing to the prejudice against your team or whatever it is. That kind of stuff. Yeah. But then we also do see that kind of stuff in more serious, like political propaganda where it's like, we're all getting together behind not liking the other thing. Right. Whatever that is. Glittering generalities, that's a way of just making something seem way more simplistic and nice than it actually is by just reducing it to this pretty sheen instead of
one of the things I use for glittering generalities is also like a per word or snarl word, which are like, words that we pick out that are either like positive or negative or whatever. Remember when Ford was using like a rock or built Ford tough or stuff like that? Do you remember that? Like they played the Bob Seger song and it was like an F-150 driving in like a mountain range, like a horse, and there was like a cowboy and maybe
America.
This is Budweiser. You know what I'm talking about though? Like they used this like built Ford tough or like a rock, and it was like you literally build the Ford Edge. Like,
so you're saying they even pick They pick words based on...
and like those are what, like, that's at the heart of like per words or glittering generality. You know what I mean? Like a lot of glittering generalities use words that make us like attached to them. Mm-hmm. That are like, is every Ford vehicle built like a rock?
Probably not.
Right, but like, could we all remember the Bob Seger thing happening? Like, sure. Yes, yeah, that type of thing. And that's also testimonial too. But anyways.
Yeah.
I love this. This is like one of my favorite things.
Yeah, you're in your zone.
I know. I love these. I have so many great examples for all of these too. I'm good. And I always talk about, this did not age well, but Jared from Subway. Because he was like a common folk, right? That's like, what was the
appeal to, like,
it's like normal people, but it's like when you watch, like I'm thinking of like AARP or something like that. They'll be like, Cheryl's really 55 and lives in Wisconsin and she loves whatever.
Look at this normal person doing a normal fun thing. But it's
also like, was it Sarah Palin and John McCain who had that random guy who got like kind of famous because they like referenced him? I was gonna say Larry the Cable Guy, but that's the comedian. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The plumber, Joe Plumber.
Is that him, Joe the Plumber?
Something like that.
Okay, but like those are the people. And like Jared from Subway was one of those people until
until that blew up in everybody's face.
Yeah, but like Jared got famous because all he did was eat Subway and lose a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
And so, but then that like turned him into an actual piece of
like, hey, look at this guy. Yeah, look what he did.
All he did was eat Subway and lost 300 pounds. Too. And then dropped him.
The idea
like
is
a rock.
Right. The idea is to make you identify with the target of the advertisement.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Those are some of my favorite ones.
Yes. So how does this all work? The psychology of propaganda. It all has to do with and centers on persuasion. Social psychology includes the study of persuasion, and that field has a lot of theories and approaches to understanding how persuasion works. There are different theories about, there's like a communication theory that points out people can be persuaded by the communicator's credibility or expertise or trustworthiness. There's a thing called the elaboration likelihood model, as well as heuristic models of persuasion. They suggest a number of factors, including the degree of interest the recipient of communication, influence the degree to which people allow factors to persuade them. There's this guy named Herbert Simon. He's a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist. He has this theory that people are cognitive misers, which I think is interesting.
That's a great phrase.
And that is that in a society of mass information, people are forced to make decisions quickly and often superficially as opposed to logically.
Yes.
We've been talking about this a lot.
It's not just teenagers.
Right. We've been talking about this a lot.
I see this daily, but it's not just them.
The vaccine conversations that we've been having. We've been having a lot of talk about how people pretty obviously don't make decisions based on rationality. And there's a lot of frustration because people try to appeal to rationality when they make arguments. But
because that's a proper argument.
Well, it is, but it's just not the way that persuasion actually works. Should work. So propaganda is often not logical. Like if the point of a piece of propaganda would be to logically convince you of something, it might actually fail at that.
I was going to say I wouldn't.
But if the point of propaganda is to rile up your emotions about something,
it's like
you can see succeeding.
Okay, but like think about it. Like in like this isn't about vaccines, but like it's why when you're looking at a commercial about like a new Swiffer, they're going to show you the dirtiest before and after. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be because if it actually showed you the average work that it does, you wouldn't go buy it.
Right.
So, like, it has to be that stark contrast. Otherwise, I'm not going to be like, this'll work. Yeah. My golden retriever's fur will not be,
We ramp up the conditions around whatever thing the thing is that we're persuading about, right?
And it works.
We make things more extreme.
I am such a sucker for that. I am
you like the dirty floors being cleaned.
No, I mean, yeah.
You are a sucker for cleaning products.
I am, but I'm also just like a sucker for anything that is like convenient or like saves time or like does these things. So if your ad somehow conveys to me that it's going to save my time, I'm going to throw my money at you because I value that. That's just such smart work. Like I'm truly that person. I make that decision so quickly and it's not logical. Mm-hmm. Totally. Like, because right now I want a Swiffer that does like 8 things. And we only have like 2 versions of floor in the house. But it can, like do it all.
We have hardwood and we have carpets.
Right. But like in my head, do we need the one that can do like high pile, medium pile, low pile, like shag?
Probably not.
Like linoleum, vinyl. Like
we only have one kind of carpet.
But in my head, I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
It does it all. Don't need it to do it all. I'm learning a lot about myself.
I can tell.
I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. There's this interesting article that seems to be pretty important because there's actually not as much research around this issue as I might have thought there would be. But that's, again, at least in part because people don't necessarily agree what propaganda is. But
I mean, listen to us.
Yeah.
And like I teach it and I'm still like, oh.
It's so hard because I think we're probably more likely to count something as propaganda than maybe we should be because everything feels like propaganda right now.
I don't think that's a bad way to treat things, though.
Well, here's this guy, William Biddle. He wrote this article in 1931. He offers a psychological definition of propaganda, and it seems to be the working one that a lot of people still kind of operate under, at least in terms of the field of psychology. He said that the 4 principles followed in propaganda are: 1, rely on emotions, never argue. So that's just like, avoid the whole logical thing altogether, right? 2, cast propaganda into the pattern of we versus an enemy.
Yes.
Reach groups as well as individuals. Hide the propagandist as much as possible.
That's exactly it.
Put the wizard behind the curtain. Because Oz is really only scary. Well, Oz is really only scary when you don't see the dude pulling the levers, right? You don't, Doesn't he have levers, strings back there? He's got something to make the machine go. Anyway, it's more intimidating when you can't see Oz.
It's what we don't see, but yeah, I'm with you.
Well, it's easier to resist propaganda when you know who the source is and why they're saying what they're saying, I think.
Give me an example.
Well, there's a lot of argument about Facebook political ads during the last couple of election cycles. And part of the problem with all of that is that it was very difficult to tell where some of this stuff was coming from. And there was some of it that was coming from foreign countries trying to persuade us. So, like, there's a lot of...
Is it like the fine print at the end that it's like, this ad is paid for by...
there was a lot of discussion about making those kinds of things more transparent. Right. So, like, political ads on TV, I think they have to disclose who has funded the ad. It's like the last thing you see.
Right, like who funded it.
Paid for by whomever for wherever, blah, blah, blah. And part of that is to basically force the voter to think a little bit about where the message is coming from.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work, and people don't always pay attention.
No, they don't.
That's or don't particularly care either. But yeah, I mean, just in general, politics, we've seen a lot of conversation around stuff. I mean, particularly in terms of bringing politics into the internet age, the Obama 2008 campaign had a lot of propaganda-related insights that have been replicated over time. There are studies from behavioral science that have become significant in understanding and planning propaganda campaigns. And like I said, the Obama 2008 campaign, they kind of made use of nudge theory. It was also adopted by the UK government behavioral insights team. And then behavioral methodologies became subject to great controversy in 2016 after the company Cambridge Analytica was revealed to have applied them with millions of people's breached Facebook data to encourage them to vote for Donald Trump.
Oh.
So we're all very familiar with all of that. Nudge theory. I forgot to look up what nudge theory is.
So Wikipedia says that nudge theory is a concept in behavioral economics, political theory, and behavioral sciences that proposes positive reinforcement and indirect suggestions as ways to influence the behavior and decision-making of groups or individuals.
Positive reinforcement. So this is like very Obama 2008. Like, yes, we can. Yeah. It's exactly that kind of stuff. So,
hope.
Hopey changey.
Just the word hope.
Just hope with no other... I mean, that's quite a piece of propaganda, really, when you think about it.
Hope?
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, he took the whole word.
Yeah.
It's like how Ohio State has the.
So
it can be good and bad.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm going back and forth.
Well, again, people don't really agree about this, about whether or not it's always... I think
that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. I think that it's difficult to see it being good. I mean, I think that...
Okay, but
especially as social media evolves...
Yeah, but I think propaganda makes us go to the bad place.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of like the St. Jude commercials. Great work. We want to support St. Jude. The Sarah McLachlan ASPCA commercials. Those are very effective.
Ooh, yeah.
See what I mean?
Like Arms of an Angel.
Yeah.
And the Arms of an Angel, those series of commercials have done.
Like I'm gonna send them my dime a day or whatever right now.
We're crying at our couch.
But like also,
Sarah McLachlan is holding a puppy.
I mean, I'm thinking of like all of these and not St. Jude. Like St. Jude is truly different, but like March of Dimes, all of these other places are so different because they take such a fraction of it. So like they rely so heavily on propaganda to survive because you know what I mean? Like they only use like a dime literally of every dollar towards something useful.
Sure. I mean, a lot of nonprofits.
My point is just that, like these are the things that come to mind when I think of like good propaganda.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think propaganda that can be used for good. I think that's... So yeah, like we're saying, the term is kind of contested. Some have argued for the neutral definition, arguing that ethics depend on intent and context, while others define it as necessarily unethical and negative, which is interesting. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I can say yes. I think every way, you know?
Yeah, I have a hard time knowing how I feel about this, but it seems like we've talked about examples that could go for a more neutral definition. Like, it doesn't have to be bad.
Yeah.
There's this one definition, Emma Bryant, she defines it as the deliberate manipulation of representations, including text, pictures, video, speech, etc., with the intention of producing any effect in the audience.
Oh, that's fine.
That is desired by the propagandist.
Oh, that's pretty broad.
Yeah. Same author explains the importance of consistent terminology across history, particularly as contemporary euphemistic synonyms are used in governments' continual efforts to rebrand their operations, such as information support and strategic communication.
Yeah.
So there's like, you know, in the White House, you might have a liaison for strategic communication or something like that. And that's really just a propagandist doing propaganda work. But
propagandizing.
But you could imagine that in some areas of the world, like, I mean, I don't know, North Korea, governmental communications from North Korea.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Hardcore propaganda. Yeah. All the time.
Well,
and
I mean,
that is meant to sort of control and instill fear and all kinds of stuff. So it's like, I don't know, maybe we need a different term for the propaganda that's the friendly kind or something.
Happy trees.
And maybe we're just content to keep it neutral.
I mean, maybe it's okay that we just always question propaganda for good or bad, though, right? Like, isn't that what we should be doing as consumers? Like, isn't that our goal as far as, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't we want to look at everything and be like, wait, what's their position? What is their perspective?
And a lot of
this...
Who's
paying for this?
Exactly. A lot of this is, like, just basic media literacy, honestly. And I think we're going to jump into, like, sort of how you teach it now. But a lot of it just has to do with understanding... with any bit of media, you know, who's the author of this message? What's the purpose of this message? When we're playing games, when we're reading books, when we're checking out Facebook feeds, when we're talking with our family members, who is it that's trying to get this message across? What's the purpose? Is this supposed to divide us? Is this supposed to unite us? Is this supposed to make us happy? Is this supposed to make us fearful?
Am I sad?
There's a lot of that going on that I think it's becoming something of a lost art, but you do teach it. So how do you go about teaching about propaganda in your classroom?
Okay, so like I said, when I do teach it, it's as part of my Holocaust unit, which is it's a pretty long unit for me. It's not quite a whole 9 weeks, but like I said, World War II propaganda, some of the best wartime propaganda that there is. And so normally I start just with sort of giving them examples. Like we talked about Keep Calm and Carry On. That was like the Crown in World War I, right? Or some Uncle Sam started popping up, and then like World War II, and that's like where we start seeing like some of the ones I was just already talking about, but also it fits so well because one of the things that the Nazis did so well is that they really understood propaganda and they knew how to make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, they had Goebbels they had a guy who did it, and he was one of the lead Nazis by the end of the war. Like, it's truly remarkable what they were able to accomplish by understanding propaganda to the lengths that they do, which is why I'm always like, I'm a little scared of propaganda because if in the wrong hands, you know,
can do some scary stuff. It can be a very powerful weapon.
So what I normally start with is looking at a bunch from World War II. How do they work? Like, and we're talking like, these are like the Victory Garden times. This is like Rosie the Riveter. I mean, this is like classic Americana, like propaganda. The stuff that we see today is almost always created from something during this time frame. It's like the golden age of propaganda.
We used to go and look at World War II and related posters to make recruitment posters for college clubs in college. I had a friend who did a whole lot of that. It was like, those were the examples of like the golden age of this kind of propaganda.
If you just look at it as an art, it's great. It's beautiful.
There's some really cool art.
Really striking work. I mean, it does such a good job. But so we start with that and just kind of say like, okay, why would the Nazis use this? And then like, why would the US use this? And like, what are we accomplishing? And how are the caricatures used? And what are the Jewish people, like all of those types of things. But then from there, I start going into some of the devices we talked about. So like jargon, snarl words, either or thinking. And we start saying, okay, what's the appeal? What are the symbols that are being used? And then I tell them like a week ahead of time that I want them to bring in however many examples from their own lives. And what they're going to do is they're going to screenshot it, or they're going to take a picture of it, or they're going to whatever. They've got to bring it in and show it to me.
I feel like I would just bring in my phone and start scrolling down any social media. And
Yeah,
just be like,
that's what a lot of them.
Propaganda.
That's what a lot of them do. And I try to tell them, like, I don't want them all from like one website. Like, I don't want just TikTok ads. I don't just like, because I want them to truly be doing something. And so they bring in those examples, and then we start applying. Like, okay, what are the symbols and what are the colors doing, and what type of devices are being used, and is it effective?
Who's the speaker? What are they persuading
exactly.
you to
and
do?
like, who's their target audience, right? Like, so why did you get this ad? That's a question I ask them a lot.
Yeah.
And like we've spoken about before, we live in, well, I work, I guess I should say, in a pretty conservative area. And so a lot of the ads that do come in, I'm like, okay, why? Who is the target audience? And why did your Facebook feed choose you? And why did your TikTok send you this?
Which is a question that all of us should be asking ourselves with every bit of especially social media that we consume, because all of what we're seeing, somebody somewhere has made a decision to bias what we see. So like the algorithms that drive the content that gets shoved in front of our eyeballs, somebody has made a conscious decision somewhere to bias it so that we see it. So why would that be? Who is making that choice?
You and I have even done this with this podcast. Yeah. I mean, there have been times we've used ads on Facebook and Instagram to try to expand it. And we go through and we pick, these are the age of people, and this is the type of people, and this is what time we think they're home. Like,
and if they're in teacher Facebook groups, we definitely want to target them.
Yeah, like, it's just been, I mean, we're all, you know what I mean? Like, that's part of the problem. But having them start to think like, okay, why did I get this? What have I liked that suggests this to me? Who in my family watches on this stuff? You know, like all of those types of things. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, my brother, this is his, whatever. You know, like a lot of them don't want to be like, oh, I got this weird ad. Because some of them are weird, right? Or like very targeted or very specific.
Very niche.
But it's always so interesting to see it occur to them, that the differences in the ads that they're seeing from like their best friend even, or the person beside them, or, you know, me. Like if I show them the ads I see and then what they see, it's like, oh my gosh, worlds apart. Yeah. So it's a really fun unit. I think it does some good work. What I have found in recent years, obviously, is that students are very, they already know what propaganda is to them, right? And so I've had students say to me like, well, if it's not on Fox News, I don't trust it. Or if it's not, you know, these types of things. And so that's been like one of the hardest parts about teaching to the current world, I guess, is that they're becoming less and less likely to be willing to understand these things, or they're less likely to open up to them, to be like, well, why would we only accept information from literally one source?
Well, I think there's like a kind of arms race, and these kids are experiencing it from when they're very young. There's a sort of arms race around cornering the propaganda market in terms of making sure that you know the us versus them, where the lines are drawn. So like, even the definition of propaganda is something that's shoved in front of like what you're talking about, like with the political climate that we have here. These kids are hearing, oh, that's just propaganda when it comes to hearing from the other side. Right. Somebody in their life is telling them, hey, that's the other. We don't listen to that.
That is propaganda.
That's propaganda.
But what we know is
don't
fact.
pay attention to that. Right. But what our side is the right and the good and the true, which itself is a kind of propagandizing. So, you know.
No, it is. And then and one of the things that I usually do with this unit, just to wrap this up, is I show them, I know we've talked about this map before, but I show them the map of media. And so, like, it's lined far left, far right, middle of the road. And, like, the most
political map of media outlets.
It's, like, the most dead center website is, like, the Weather Channel, which I love. That's how it should be. That's exactly how the Weather Channel should operate. But I show them that. And so then, like, I have them each plot their own media points to be like, what does it lean? How do you self-identify? And what does that show us? Right. I mean, I'm guilty of it, right? My dots are always in my area of what I would, you know, vote in, or how I vote or whatever. So it's really interesting. But it's also a great time to be like, hey, I should also be expanding where I get my information. Sure. And that's always true. Like, I really do feel that way. I tell my students that all the time. We shouldn't just trust it because it's one place, even if it's your favorite place. And so I'm guilty of that too. I consume a lot of the same media. And it's because I trust them. But what am I, you know, I'm not doing it either.
There's a lot of trustworthiness is a big factor in making propaganda work the way that it is. Because if you don't trust the speaker, then it's just not going to work on you. That's part of that persuasive that persuasiveness metric that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. It's not easy to teach. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. It's getting harder. Is the other thing I would say.
I can't
is that
imagine
I'm having
trying.
a much harder time every single year that I do it. It gets more difficult.
I would guess that you're probably doing a very good job to pick a somewhat dated time frame. I would guess that it would be easier for these kids to study propaganda from World War II, for example. I mean, I don't know, even World War II is a little hard right now, but just like some of these older examples. Yeah, I think some older examples so that they have a little bit of distance from it probably makes them more likely to be open to learning about methods and you know, the way that it persuades you. Yeah. Then when it's closer to them, when it's closer to the current political moment, they're not going to be as likely to want to think about it.
And that's why
it's more entrenched. You have to remove them a bit.
Well, and that's why the bridge starts with what worked during the Holocaust or World War I, what was effective. And then from there, I start showing them more recent ads from, I'd say, the last 20 years to give them examples of like testimonials or whatever. And so I think that those are good starts. But when we get into them actually bringing in their own, that's where it gets.
That's what I mean.
I mean,
the
it's
closer
been,
it is
I've had
to now.
QAnon come in. I've had InfoWars come in. I have had, and I've seen all of them. And it's always just, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I've seen all types of propaganda come in. And I see how it can pigeonhole you, and I see how it can trap you into believing that this is the only voice that could possibly be true. Yeah. And I think that's what's the scariest thing to think about is that these are 15 and 16-year-olds who are being cornered this way.
I think we're definitely in an age of heightened propaganda use.
Yeah. And like, I mean, listen to us having this conversation. We are well educated and we're in our 30s and like, we're still like, ooh, is it good? Is it bad? Like, so imagine being 15 or 16. Like, that's what my kids are, you know? So these targeted ads are like fact. They're truth to them. So.
I think I still probably err on the side of a neutral definition of propaganda because I do think that, I mean, it's hard to see it now just because of how us versus them, the entire freaking world is right now, especially politically. It's hard to see how it could be put to good purpose because almost all of it is just further entrenching divides. So there's a lot of energy in the world of propaganda being spent on making sure the dividing lines stay dividing lines. But I think there's hope for kinds of media, new kinds of media, educational media, all kinds of stuff that I think I could imagine propaganda being put to good use. Yes. But there needs to be some sort of breaking point that we go past with this the current political situation.
I mean, how many TikTok ads have I sent you to be like, this is cool. It's working.
It's working. It's working on me.
No, I mean, I'm with you. I don't think it's all bad. Am I offended that it nails my exact everything so often? Yes. Does that bother me? Yes. Are they listening right now? Yes.
Always.
As I sit here talking about want to look at the branding for the new iPhone.
Yeah. You're like, let's go check out the new iPhone.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh.
Apple propaganda machine.
See what I mean? This is it though.
Hard at work. As I sit here staring at my notes on my iPad. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Ready to go? Shall we move on to fill in the blank?
Do you want to do the last question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. This famous Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, or Parkland High School graduate, was once harassed in D.C. by Marjorie Taylor Greene. She called him a coward there. However, he is actually a Harvard student and has written a New York Times bestseller and was named as one of Time 100's 100 most influential people in 2018. Who was that? That was David Hogg. Very outspoken Parkland survivor, yeah. Led a lot of those March for Our Lives initiatives, kind of has traveled around the country. He's still doing
a lot of that work.
Yep.
I cannot believe I forgot to mention this in the last episode, which was about school shootings. But I totally forgot to mention that there are companies that sell inserts for backpacks that are bulletproof.
Yeah.
I looked at them when they first came out and never bought one. They're pretty expensive. But I was thinking about those, and because this year my school students are no longer allowed to carry backpacks.
Oh geez.
So I was thinking about that market and like what that is, and that there are people capitalizing on this, which is like, I mean, they're making $1, sure, but also like it is a safety thing, right? Like I can totally get behind that.
You don't want that industry to have to exist.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was coming from. But I was thinking about like, oh gosh, it's like a whole piece of propaganda, and it fits with our last episode. But that's like a whole industry of back to school shopping, I guess. You know, and I've actually had some coworkers purchase them, put them in their backpacks.
Body armor,
and they are heavy.
Yeah,
holy cow. Yeah. Anyways, okay. So this episode's question.
Yes.
Rosie the Riveter is one of the most famous pieces of World War II U.S. propaganda, featuring a woman flexing with the line, "We can do it," above her head. Rosie was originally created by a Pittsburgh artist named J. Howard Miller in 1942. Most people associate Rosie with a famous painter who is known for his work as an American illustrator, who created his Rosie in 1943. So who is that famous American illustrator? So when you think of Rosie, it's probably this one.
Yeah, even though it was not invented by him.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
What we got? We made it. A little bit lighter of a topic. It does feel good.
Yes, it's
School
nice
shootings
not
was
to be
very
in
draining.
deep dark.
Yes.
Yes.
So what'd you learn?
Okay.
Your
So I
music
mentioned,
stuff.
I mentioned I've been making a lot of music. I'm trying to put it on my calendar so that I work on it every day, because otherwise I just kind of do it when I'm inspired and I don't make music as often as I would like to. So I'm trying to I'm trying to be more diligent and develop a habit of working on it instead of just these one-off random bursts of inspiration.
That's cool.
So I've been working with Logic Pro because I just needed to pick a digital, so it's called a DAW, digital audio workstation usually, and there are a bunch of programs that I've used over the years to do this. One of the programs that I tried using for a while is what I used to edit the podcast in part, but anyway, I eventually landed on Logic Pro, which is Apple's music production,
Oh, I didn't know that was Apple's.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Does GarageBand not exist?
It is like a fancier, more complicated version of GarageBand.
Gotcha.
GarageBand is like the
beginner version?
easy up and going version of Logic Pro, kind of.
Gotcha.
Kind of, yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so I've been working with Logic Pro, and I've been trying to learn the ropes, and there are just so many settings and plugins and samples and instruments, and
Too much.
there's a lot to learn. It's very overwhelming, but one thing I did learn how to do this week was use the drum machine designer. So I put together some pack of samples, and I made basically like a beat out of them using this drum machine designer.
Cool.
So yeah, it was cool. Like,
Way to go.
it has this visual representation of all the beats, and you can like subdivide the beats by more or less to make them go faster or slower, and it's kind of this cool like geometric.
Is it like
layout.
intuitive as far as like?
Yeah, you just like click on the square, the squares, and they'll make the noise, and you
okay.
can kind of
Gotcha.
so you kind of just like put them in the correct beat pattern, and it's cool. It's cool. That's how. Yeah, that's what I learned to do.
So that's been something fun to teach yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Mine is something I won't shut up about.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Of course.
Do you want me to do what I learned?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Please do.
So this episode originally is going to be posted Thursday, September 16th.
Mm-hmm.
So we did not mention in our previous episode anything about September 11th or the anniversary of it, but it has been 20 years since that. Chelsea and I kind of just went through some, I don't know, I think we both have some pretty weird emotions about it. I think we probably both have some pent up things. We were in 6th grade when it happened, and we both have very, very vivid memories of what we saw for me in my 6th grade math class on the TV. And so I think for maybe people our age and even old, like my mom even mentioned, like kind of being in a weird funk. It's a hard day, and it's so defined for the two of us, our entire childhood. It felt like in our entire adulthood too.
Yes, I was gonna say everything.
Right, but I guess I just meant it really felt like a turning point for some reason. Like when I think back to it, that felt like a pin, like a flip of a switch for me. But I didn't even talk about it with my students because I was like, what do I say? How do I approach this in some way that does anything for these people and for who lost their loved ones and whatever? And so Chelsea has, for a couple years now, been telling me about this show called Come From Away that she saw live on Broadway a few years back.
Yeah, pre-pandemic.
And just could not get over how incredible it was. And I was kind of like, yeah, sure, okay. And I'd never seen it live. But it recently, just this past week, came out on Apple TV, if you have it, a live recorded version of it that was done in, I think, like April or May of this past year, 2021. And it is the incredible musical story of... I love this show so much. It's an incredible musical about the people in Newfoundland who took in thousands of people who were in the air when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And how they could not... The U.S. airspace closed. And so it forced a bunch of people to land in places all around the United States. But Come From Away specifically is about the people of Newfoundland who took in, what was it, like 6,000 or 7,000 strangers.
This little town
for
in
days.
Newfoundland called Gander.
And they had like 30-some planes land there. Yeah. And they took care of them. And it was like, I mean, they had hours to prepare basically. and without knowing if any of those planes were also part of the coordinated attack. So it's so well done. Oh my gosh, I've told so many people about it.
It's a very wholesome story. I think I told you it's really helped me process 9/11 because it never really did. I don't know. I just never really, like, it's just this giant thing that hangs over our national consciousness. And because we were so young at the time, and I felt like looking back on how I reacted, I was like, dang, I did not take it seriously enough because I didn't really understand the seriousness of it.
Didn't know.
We hadn't yet experienced this sort of constant, steady cycle of like mass shootings in this country. So we weren't desensitized to this kind of event like we are kind of now, I guess I would say, which is very sad to say. But anyway, it was very big. It was this monolithic thing, but we were kids when we experienced it. So I think just like there's gonna have to be a lot of retrospective work done in looking at that event and how it played out and what it did to our lives and all of that. But I do think that in terms of art that has been used to help people process it, I think it's a really good, I mean, it's just a really good show.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a feel good show. It also tackles a lot of difficult things.
It like touches on all of the parts of 9/11 that are hard, I think. And I think it does a really beautiful job of that. And also it's like a story of humanity, and I just think that's so great.
Yeah.
And it's cool in like a world sort of vision way to think about it. So Come From Away, you could probably see it live in a city near you. I'm sure they're back to traveling soon. Broadway is returning soon.
Yeah.
And it's on Apple TV, and it is so great. So catchy. So anyways, well, I think that's it.
I think that about wraps.
So watch Come From Away. Go get your vaccine or your booster if it's time. Help out our hospitals who are just swamped right now. Anything else?
I think that's about it.
Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for supporting 16 to 1.
We're trying to grow our audience, so please check us out at 16to1.com, all spelled out, and tell your friends about the show.
On our website, you can find links to follow us on social media, an archive of all our old episodes, and a contact form where you can get in touch.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next show.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out your window, underneath all that rain is Maine.